Most decluttering advice tells you to be ruthless. If you're unsure, let it go. Don't look back, don't negotiate. I think that's terrible advice, especially if you want decluttering to actually last. Today, I'm going to show you a better way to decide and declutter, one that leaves room for real world uncertainty without letting every little maybe stay. If we haven't yet met, I'm Astha. I've spent years researching and writing about decluttering, and I've published over 90 articles on this topic. And the longer I do this, I find myself less interested in rules that only work if you can predict some future or if you have to behave like a decluttering robot. I can't do either. I'm guessing you can't too. Now, I understand why this advice of ruthlessness exists. When you're standing in front of a cupboard holding a broken pen, 3 expired creams, and a charger for a phone that was last seen in 2014, a firm rule like this is useful. Some decisions don't need a committee meeting. Ruthlessness also feels productive. You move fast, bags leave the house, the before after is excellent. For one afternoon, you become the most decisive version of yourself who has no attachment to paperwork or Tupperware lids. But a dramatic clear out is not always repeatable. Ruthlessness treats every pause as weakness. It never actually teaches you to listen to those little pauses and hesitations, even though they actually contain some really useful information. The problem begins when we take a rule that was designed for obvious clutter and apply it to every uncertain object in a house. The expensive tool you use once in a while, the spare cable that fits something important, the dress you do wear just not very often, emergency supplies, documents, that one backup item that would be genuinely difficult to replace. Real life has gray areas. Be ruthless forces each one into a yes or a no. That is not a decluttering method. That is asking you to know the future. If you can't know the future, how are you supposed to decide? Start by recognizing that there are two ways you could be wrong. Whenever you're unsure about an object, your brain usually shows you one possible mistake. You let it go, and 2 months later, you need it. That mistake is vivid. You can already see yourself looking for it, getting annoyed that you can't find it, maybe buying it again and thinking, I really should have kept that. But there is another possible mistake. You keep it, store it, move it, clean around it, reconsider it, only to come back after 2 years and realize you didn't use it. That mistake is quieter. There is no single dramatic moment. The cost arrives in installments, so you don't register it as much. And this is why, could I use this someday, is such a rigged question. Your brain basically becomes Doctor Strange. It scans 14 million possible futures until it finds that one reality in which you desperately need this exact cable. Of course, you could use it someday. Anything can be useful if you allow the future to get fictional enough. There's actually some research that helps explain this. Some studies on regret have found that actions can hurt more in the short term, while the cost of inaction becomes clearer over time. That fits the decluttering moment surprisingly well. Letting go feels like the risky action. Keeping it feels natural, but keeping is also a decision. It just hides its costs and consequences better. Once you see both mistakes, the goal changes. In either of the two cases, keep it or let it go, you cannot avoid regret entirely. You need a process to survive it. This is the part that most decluttering advice does not say clearly enough. You are allowed to regret getting rid of something. Not constantly, not recklessly, but occasionally. If you let go of hundreds of low value items and realize you threw one cable and you have to replace it later, that does not mean that the entire clear out was a mistake. It just means that you made decisions not knowing the next 5 years like a normal human being. But often, that one regretted item becomes a witness in defense of every other object in your house. You needed that one cable, so suddenly the other 46 cables in your house have legal representation. And the next time you declutter, you end up keeping everything. Not because the objects are useful, but because you no longer trust yourself to decide. That is why ruthless decluttering is not always sustainable. It can clear a room quickly, but if one imperfect decision makes you lose confidence in yourself, you can lose faith in the idea of decluttering itself. So instead of trying to guarantee that you will never be wrong, compare the cost of both possible mistakes. First, if I let this go and need it later, how hard will recovery be? Don't just ask, will it cost money? Ask whether it's easy to find, quick to replace, and safe to be without for a few days. A common cable that can arrive again tomorrow is one kind of a risk. A spare key, a medical item, an expensive specialist tool, that's another kind of risk. They don't deserve the same rule. And then there is the second possible mistake. If I keep this and never use it, what will it actually cost me? Answer this with questions like, how much space does it take? Does it create a pile? Will you remember that you own it? Will you be able to find it when that imaginary emergency arrives? Because an item you can't remember or retrieve is not really a backup. It's clutter with an insurance badge. Once you compare the cost of both mistakes, you have three valid answers. 1. Let it go. This is when the inconvenience of replacing this item is smaller than the ongoing cost of storing it. 2. Keep it deliberately. Not because it might be useful in one of Doctor Strange's obscure timelines, but because being without it will create a real problem. 3. Keep a limited amount. This is the answer that extreme decluttering advice often misses. For example, let's say you do use glass jars sometimes. That's fine. Just keep the 6 that fit in that one drawer. You don't need to keep all. You don't need to annex that next cabinet. Just give it a boundary and keep a limited amount. I learned this the hard way with plastic bags. I remember in my previous apartment, I used to have this bag full of plastic bags that I thought I might need in some plastic bag emergency. It became so bad that it started taking over my entire room that I was using as storage. And there were plastic bags strewn everywhere. Eventually, it brought me so much stress that I had to take care of it. And I made it a rule that when I moved into this new apartment of mine, I'll make sure that I only dedicate one drawer for plastic bags and paper bags, mostly paper bags now, and nothing goes beyond this one drawer. So useful does not mean unlimited. If you want backups, fine. Keep one backup, not 7. If you're unsure about a category, just give it one box or one drawer. A boundary lets you respect uncertainty without giving it unlimited square footage. A successfully decluttered home is not one where you never need something you let go of. It is one you can manage because you stopped keeping hundreds of things to avoid replacing one. Occasionally replacing an ordinary item is sometimes a small cost to pay if you have less to store and sort. Think of it as a small regret budget. The point is not to become careless. The idea is to stop treating one imperfect decision as evidence of keeping everything forever. So, no, I don't think you need to be ruthless. You just need to be clear about the risk on both sides. Keep it or let it go. You need to have boundaries for the maybes in your life. And most importantly, you need to have enough trust in yourself to survive making the wrong decisions, to survive being wrong once in a while. That is what makes decluttering sustainable. Not perfect decisions, but recoverable ones. And if the item that you're stuck on is not a cable or a spare jar, but something with guilt, money, or a person attached to it, I've made a free tool for you called Let It Go. It asks you a few simple questions about the object that you're finding hard to let go of and helps you make the decision based on your unique circumstances. If you think this is something that will be useful for you, I've linked it down below. It's absolutely free. So this week, choose one maybe item in your house. Compare the cost of both mistakes for this one item and then come to your decision. let it go, keep it deliberately, or give it a boundary. Be intentional, be clear, not ruthless. And if you have a whole pile of decisions that you keep postponing, you need to watch this video next. I'll see you in the next one.